This is Not Worth Living, a podcast that features creatives interviewing themselves with a preset list of questions. Unlike other podcasts that feel like conversation between friends, this one aims to feel like eavesdropping on a psychiatrist's visit. Today's episode features...
Hi, my name is Andrew, and it is 2:22 a.m. on March 19th. I am sitting in my office in Minneapolis, and this is where I read and edit books for 1111 Press. The way that my desk is positioned, I'm looking outside, and my neighbors have their TV on, and so it's off in the distance and kind of distracting. To the left of me and to the right of me are tall bookshelves that line the walls from the floor to the ceiling. Behind me, there's a row of books as well, and behind that is another row of books. Between those two rows creates a hallway that leads to a place that I sit for meditation in the mornings and in the evenings. On the opposite side of the shelf, which would be to the left of this other bookshelf, is a chair that I sometimes sit in and read. And that's my office. That's where I'm sitting right now, and that's where I'm talking to you from. I've decided I wanted to record this without any edits, just write straight from my consciousness. I'm not even really sure what this is all entails as far as the podcast goes. I haven't listened to the first episode, and I haven't read all the directions yet, but I know I'm supposed to record myself. So I'll open up the email, and I'll see what the questions are. But I wanted to just set a tone for where I am right now in this place. It's very quiet. And I often stay up late, or I wake up very early, so I can be awake when no one else is. Because it seems like my thoughts are more clear during this time. They always have been, and I've just always liked being in these quiet times. When everyone else is awake, there's a lot of energy, and it's hard to focus. So hopefully, this clarity will come through in the recording. Okay, I'm going to open up this email. Let's see. Okay. This is for a new podcast. It's called Not Worth Living. And I suppose this comes from, Plato, who said, an unexamined life is not worth living. Is that right? Let's see what the questions are. It is a self-interview podcast. The tone and length are completely up to the interviewee. Okay, perfect. Podcast features preset questions. Unlike other podcasts that feel like conversation between friends, this one aims to feel like eavesdropping on a psychiatrist visit. Oh, perfect. Well, let's look at the questions. Please pick any combination of questions below. Read them out loud before answering. Okay, I can do that. And I apologize if my voice is a little raspy. I I have a little bit of a cold that I'm getting over. And I think that just comes with the territory of having young kids, because they're always sick. But then also it being winter in the Midwest. And it just seems like we have two seasons. The first is summer, and then the second is sickness. And so summer lasts in Minnesota maybe about 3 months. And so then we have about 9 months of sickness. And so we have maybe about 3 more months of sickness left. I think that's a dad joke, right? Okay, the first question is, what makes you tick? Let's see. Is this still recording? It is. Okay, perfect. What makes me tick? I suppose what keeps me going, right? Is that I'm going to say that's what you're asking here. What keeps me going throughout the day? And I'd have to say that what makes me tick, what keeps me going, is my meditation practice. Yeah, I don't know how far we want to get into this, but like I mentioned earlier, I do meditate in the mornings and in the evenings. And I meditate, everything that I do, it's about 45 minutes to an hour for each session. So that brings us to about maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours every day that I'm meditating. And I started doing this a couple years ago. Really after I read the book, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And that book was so inspiring to me. At the time, I mean, many years leading up to it, I had been exploring altered states of consciousness, really exploring these deep questions. These questions that I think a lot of people don't even think about, but and I don't understand why they don't. I think from a young age, I was confused why people aren't in a state of mass panic, because we don't really know how we got here, and we don't know where we're going. We just somehow appear in a family, and it really doesn't appear to be by choice. At least at first it doesn't. And then we're supposed to live a life, and our current culture is one that reinforces difficult concepts, for at least me, one of materialism, one of that reinforces the ego. And I've never been one that is that wants to compete in a way that hurts others. And so business for me has been one that puts people first. And in doing so, I suppose I haven't been maybe as successful as others have been, but I've always done things I really care about. But anyways, that's a tangent of the initial question that I was posing for myself, just about why I meditate. And yeah, just that there's all these questions, and so I mentioned one, so kind of asking why are we here, and that being a huge mystery that a lot of people ask themselves. And then the second, which I just hinted at, which is I've never had an inclination or desire to be famous, or to amass huge quantities of money. And so I've really fallen out of touch with, I'd say, most of the world. I think that a lot of things that people chase after, a lot of these desires just don't really mean a lot to me. And I've just become sort of an outcast, even among outcasts. Because, sure, after you reject contemporary culture and see that making a bunch of money or being famous only leads to more suffering, then the counter to that seems to embrace other things that I don't necessarily embrace either, which are more desires of drugs and alcohol and that alternative behavior of these other desires, which I did go down that path, and I found it to be unfulfilling. So, that's how I started to read more about meditation and yoga and this search for higher consciousness. And growing up in the family that I did, one that was very religious, any kind of organized religion was an immediate turnoff. And so that's why I was really pleased to find this intersection of the East and West in the book Autobiography of a Yogi. And so from there, I started taking some classes at an organization that was started by a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, who was the author of Autobiography of a Yogi. And through those classes, I have become a disciple of Yogananda and been initiated into the highest technique of Kriya Yoga, which is probably one of the most profound experiences of my life, was the initiation. So what does this mean for writing and publishing? Well, it's definitely how it keeps me ticking along and helps me keep balanced and focused. I found through the techniques just endless energy and focus, and a great sense of inner peace, which I think is what the end of what we're all searching for is inner peace. And like I mentioned before, a lot of our culture goes about it in a way to find inner peace through chasing after desires, such as amassing money or power. I think that one of the most interesting things for me in experiencing, chasing after some of those desires is when I had my first book published, and I thought it was going to be the thing that would complete me, and it ended up making me more anxious. I mean, throughout all of my childhood and my teens and early to mid-20s, I thought that getting a book published was the highest of all successes. And I found that not to be the case. And in fact, it was the opposite. And it was only because I went into it with the intention of it, hoping that it was going to solve, this dissonance inside of myself. And so that's why I've said in interviews before that it's the act of writing, the act of going into yourself, the whole writing process, that is where the important work is done. Of course, sharing that with others and having them read that and having other people encouraging them to go to those same places that you went yourself, that's a great thing to do as well. But yeah, let's see what I feel like I could ramble on for a long time. There's no one to cut me off. So I can revisit that and have a longer conversation with anyone who wants to. Where are we at? Okay, 14 minutes. Well, feel free to cut any of that out if you'd like to. Okay, next question. Would you open an envelope with your death date? Shit. That's an interesting question. I don't think that it would really matter to me. I think that I die daily. I don't mean. That I live very closely to death, and I have my whole life. I had heart problems when I was younger, and frequently thought about what it would be like to not be here anymore. But something I do, and this is part of my meditation practice, is when I'm falling asleep, just reminding myself that none of this is real. This whole world that we live in is real in a sense, but ultimately it is just a dream. And where I go when I dream is not very much different from this world that we are living in now. And so death for me is just a state of consciousness that that was, we alter our consciousness every day. Every time we go to sleep, we alter our consciousness. So death isn't anything that I would say that I have any fear of anymore. So yeah, that again, that opens up a huge Pandora's box of like many, or maybe Pandora's box isn't the correct word there. I think that there's a lot of these questions that are like opening a door to a hallway, and in answering one question, you open that door up to a hallway with many more doors, and each of those doors are opening to other hallways of many other rooms, and so that's just a very big question. But yeah, I don't know if I don't think that it would change how I live my life now if I knew when I was going to die. Let's see, what was the first time you remember creating something intentionally? So let's see. Creating something intentionally. I've always been pretty artistic, and I remember my kindergarten teacher, she'd always take pictures of the things that I would create. I really loved my kindergarten class because we had these big spools of like butcher paper, and I would make like boats like that I could sit in, and I made a human body with bones and things. So I guess I was very into art from a young age. Even though I really, I guess, don't create that kind of art anymore. But yeah, I guess like maybe when it comes to writing, I remember in second grade, we had journal time, and that was the first time I remember being encouraged to keep a journal. And I remember enjoying journaling so much that I asked to stay in from recess, so I could continue journaling and writing. And it was always something that was very calming, comforting. And I still keep kind of a journal. I was talking to Sam Moss this past week. Sam is an editor with 1111 Press, and we're having a meeting about some books that we're working on, and of course catching up about various things, his writing, my writing. And I'm working on this kind of a memoir of sorts about growing up in the very myopic, very weird kind of religious community I was part of throughout my youth, and then going away from religion, and then now coming back in this new way. And I'm calling it right now. God is here. God is nowhere. Where you kind of have both words smushed together, so you can read it as God is now here, or God is nowhere. And I'm writing all the time. I have a notes app on my phone that at the beginning of the day I put the date, and I just write any kind of observations that seem interesting to me. And I'm collecting all of this and using it as material. And then I've been doing this for many, many years. And I'm going through and trying to write about various times in my life. And something that I was talking to Sam about is the more that I find this inner peace inside of myself, the less I need to write about. The less I need to write about, I guess, anything in general. I have less to say. And I've just been really thinking about that, about how during the years that were very painful, I was writing all the time, and I used writing as a way to process the pain. And now, as things have eased up, I sometimes go days without writing, and it's because I just don't use it in that way anymore. So that was quite the tangent from the question, which was, what was the first time you remember creating something intentionally? So, but yeah, I guess going back to that second grade journal, there have been times in my life where I haven't been able to find comfort in anything else besides writing. And so that journaling was incredibly important to find and discover. The next question is, what keeps you motivated? And I'm going to pause here for a minute so I can think about it. Well, I guess that there's a few different motivations. I have a motivation to support my family, because I have 3 very young kids. And publishing and writing, they don't always pay the bills, and so I do have a job outside of 1111 and my personal writing. So my family is a big motivator, just to make sure that we have food and shelter. But I guess despite all of that, what keeps me motivated to, I assume this is what keeps me motivated to keep creating things creatively. And that's a really great question. I think that from the publishing side, I see that there's so many great, wonderful stories that deserve a platform, and that need to be published, just for the simple fact that it uplifts people's consciousness to read books where people honestly examine themselves. And I think that that's a key component of many 1111 books. And I mean, honestly, just in general, other people motivate me, because like I said before, obviously money and success don't motivate me, but just really tapping into that human experience and examining the self. And that's something I should also say too, is that let me check the time here quick. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not going too long. So something else I should say is the kind of yogic philosophy I follow is something called self-realization. And that's how I see a lot of the writing that I do and a lot of the writing that 1111 publishes is this realization of the self and trying to identify that self. The whole idea of we are the stories that we tell ourselves, and kind of going back to some of those earlier stories of how we formed our identity. All of those things, I think that those are the things that matter in life, are asking those really deep, difficult questions. Who inspires you at the moment? That's the next question. Who inspires you at the moment? Well, I mean, as I mentioned, Paramahansa Yogananda, and oh boy, this is difficult. I mean, I feel like I could sit here and I feel like I need some time to sit and reflect. What I really like about the written interviews is I can kind of stare off into space for 20 minutes and write a sentence. But now there's going to be a bunch of dead space. I don't know. I mean, this is hard. There are a lot of people I look up to. I've been going back to the founding fathers of the U.S. and I've been reading biographies of them, and I really admire John Adams. And I, of course, like Benjamin Franklin. And something about those characters also is they also had a prayerful meditation routine as well, which is really interesting to find that many of these founding fathers would sit for an hour a day in prayerful meditation. Probably, yeah. I can't think of any kind of popular celebrity. It's just a bunch of like yogis, a bunch of. I mean, let's see. Paul Brunton is someone who I'm reading right now. He was an English journalist who went to places like India and Egypt and was searching for highly advanced souls. Yeah, I guess that those are the things that matter to me right now. Okay, what's your latest project? Well, with 1111 Press, we recently released Vicky Now's book called Suicide: The Autoimmune Disorder of the Psyche. And that was a difficult book. It's a hard topic. And the reason why we wanted to bring it out in the world is because suicide is a topic that often gets overlooked until it's too late. It's a taboo topic. It's a taboo topic even among people who claim to claim to be very progressive. And we wanted to bring it more out in the open because I feel like a lot of people who are struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts don't feel like they have anyone who they can talk to. and we wanted to put it out there in an agnostic way, meaning we don't have an opinion of one way or the other. We just want people to talk about it, and our hope is in talking about it, people can find the clarity they need around those feelings, those deep feelings, those hurtful feelings. Yeah, I mean, V has one opinion. I have another opinion about it. I just think that there needs to be more care and compassion in the world for anyone who's feeling that way. And so, it has been really kind of interesting though, because there have been some media outlets who have really shied away from wanting to talk about it or help promote it because the word suicide is just so loaded, and I feel like they don't want to even have that word on their website or printed anywhere, just because, like I said, it is like a very taboo word. And I think that just what people need is just to be able to be like, hey, like, I don't know if life is worth living, and I really want to talk about it. I mean, that's what Albert Camus said in what is that, the Myth of Sisyphus, about how the one great philosophical question is, whether, should I continue existing or not, before asking any other questions. That is the question we should ask first. So again, another avenue, another door that opens up into a hallway of more doors. If money was no object, it's not, what would be your dream project? I don't know. I feel very fortunate. I think that I'm very happy with everything I'm doing right now, and I don't have any desire to do anything more than I'm doing right now. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I did mention that I have to have a normal job in order to continue with 1111 Press, because we really don't get paid much of anything for that, because we always put it into the next round of books, and print runs are expensive, and so on and so on. But really that's kind of a good way to limit how many books we can do each year. And so if we only put out 4 or 6 books a year, it's good to have some of those limitations, so we can really put the care and energy into those few books. Whereas if we had, I don't know, 15 or 20 books, I think that I wouldn't be able to fully invest myself in them as much as I'd like to. So yeah, I don't know. The dream project is currently happening right now with everything I have going on. Is there a quote or a motto that you work by? I'm sure that there's a lot of really great quotes. Let's see. Well, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. Really like that. I mean, there's a lot of really great quotes. A lot of it has to do around willpower, and yeah, I guess I've always thought it's funny that my last name is Wilt, and there's this Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt, and wilt being a form of will and willpower. I've always been attracted to willpower, and I think that everyone has so much more willpower than they know. And if they could only tap into that, if they could only discover that in themselves, they literally could move mountains. There's so much potential inside of each of us. And I really believe that in the coming years, in the coming decades, coming generations, people will learn how to tap into that willpower, and we'll see some radical changes. Our culture is very limiting, and it's unfortunate. But anyone listening to this, please do realize that you have almost unlimited amount of willpower. I mean, maybe an unlimited amount of willpower inside of you, and you can do so much more than maybe the story that you tell yourself of what you think you can do. Would you be friends with yourself? Well, I think that we are all individual aspects of the divine, and I strive to be friends with everybody. I like to see the good in everybody. We're all working through things. I'm working through things, most definitely. But I think that that's where people get in trouble, is looking at ways to divide themselves from other people, instead of seeing the goodness that each of us have. So, what do you do differently from other people? Well, I don't know. I suppose there's a lot. I think that the hard part for me is what I mentioned earlier in this, which is that I seem to, because I don't fit in with anything mainstream, but I also don't fit in with a lot of the counterculture crowd. And so, yeah, I don't. Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of something that I was going to say before, which is all the meditation and these ancient techniques that I follow. All of the things that people do through drugs and alcohol and other sense desires that they follow, all of those things can be achieved through meditation, through they're all contained inside of yourself already, and you don't have to do those things, those external things. It's and that's really hard to explain to a lot of my friends who are part of, I guess, this other crowd, this other scene. And I mean, ultimately, it's whatever decision you want to make. I mean, it's not up to me to make a decision for you, obviously. But yeah, I think that's probably how I do things differently, is that I do things, completely without drugs or alcohol or eating meat or fish. Yeah, I do things always with the thought of I'm trying to think of this in a palatable way for most people. I do it with the thought of the divine, or I call it Divine Mother. I like to think of God as Divine Mother, as Divine Mother Kali, and I have a close attunement with her, and so I don't think that you'll find very much of anyone who will say that yeah, but maybe in time other people will discover the shortcomings of drugs and alcohol and other things, and they'll come back to their Divine Mother Kali. What do I want my epitaph to say? Oh, it doesn't need to say anything. I hope to be cremated. I don't know. I hope that the positivity I put into the world, and it doesn't need to be, I don't need to get any kind of credit for it. I just hope to be a very positive person, and I hope that positivity inspires other people to be positive and loving and supportive to one another. Because we as a human species, we're part of one great big family, even outside of humans, and I mean this includes animals and plants and our world. We're all part of a collective consciousness, and anything that you do to another person that's negative is hurtful, ultimately to yourself, because you're part of that collective. So yeah, I don't need to have anything other than just remaining positive and hoping that I can be a small light in a dark area. Well, I don't know how much of this you're gonna keep. I don't know how much of it is good. But I think I made it through all of the questions. Oh, and then at the bottom there's examples. Well, okay. I'll have to look at those later. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope I said something of value. This was very interesting. Peace, love, and joy to you all. Home, peace, amen.